let's start the meeting. Since you call to the order, welcome and introduction. So if you want to start, hey, Vito, how are you?
All right.
Julie Harper from Construction Services, Lake County School District.
Scott Rickenbacker, Director of Construction, Lee County Schools.
Jacqueline Brown Interiors.
Frank Stout, EnviroStruct.
Stephen Horde, Rams.
Rick Vasky, Berkshire Bay Contract.
Art Castellanos, architect.
Peter Snell, Clayton Contracting.
Bob Taylor, ADG Architecture.
John Tobler, Tobler Construction.
Ryan Richards, ROG Architects.
Haitham Mahmood.
Tom Mayo, Harvard Joby.
It's Clarissa Parodi with VG Architecture.
Uvalde Hill, Clay County.
Debbie Jordan, Board Liaison, and I'm sitting here so I can see everybody's face when they talk. Trying
Nice
to
to
get
see
crazy
you.
when I can't see you.
Well, everybody's here, so we are, we have people. So we, as the first item, we have the approval of the April 12, 2023 meeting agenda. So can I have a
I
motion?
move to approve the agenda.
Second. Kind of a tie.
All in favor?
Okay.
Any discussion? on
You can
that?
have it.
Okay. So, no discussions, all in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. Thank you. So we have the minutes from last meeting. So we need to move to the approval of the minutes from last meeting, from March 1st, 2023.
I'd like to move that to be approved.
They're gonna do all the motions
That's
today?
that way.
Second.
Any discussion, anybody, any comments for these minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Wow, everybody again. And the next item we have is the board member update. Nice to see you, Ms. Jordan.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here always. I really don't have, the only update that I have is that Franklin Park has the destruction of that school. It's coming down. So I'm really excited about that. I was able to go over there and knock out half a wall with a sledgehammer. Was able to get on a machine and take out this, I'm not even sure what it was, but I was driving it.
Oh, you drove it?
I
Okay.
did. I actually took the ceiling down and then knocked out a half a wall. I really am not good at games, so that was really hard for me. But it was really exciting to see that, and it's approximately, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, or Scott, approximately 6 weeks for that to be completed for it to be flattened out in order to begin. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so that was my excitement for the update. Dr. Bernier gave an update at the board workshop, at their meeting on Tuesday. We really didn't have much of an update. We're just moving along with the projects that we're working on, which is Hector Cavaretta, still working with the Fort Myers Beach schools. And I believe that's pretty much it. And we're just moving forward.
Correct.
So that's really all I have to say that pertains to construction or.
I mean, I could give you some more. Basically, they're meeting the board members, I believe, one-on-one for construction updates with the interim chief officer, my boss, Jeff Wagner. And we have 2 RFQs that are out on the street for a new high school out in the Lehigh area, and also a new middle school, OO, out in the Lehigh area. So we're in the current process of contract negotiation with all 3 parties involved in those schools. And they're scheduled for an opening of hopefully 2026, depending on FDEP constraints.
And then we did name the new school, well, the old new school.
Correct.
They used to be Lambs, was just, we voted on a name on that one, which is Emil Teal School. So that'll be, and then principal's excited, so he's on board and working really hard to get his staff in place. Opening new schools in Montecito, of course, is gonna be ready to be open as well. So that's 2 schools that we're trying to make sure that we are gonna be prepared for the next upcoming year, and to make sure that we have staffing for the students to come in. And then along that will be the other ones that Scott just spoke about. So Scott, thank you for
Scott, I have a question. The CMs, or the RFQs, is that for CMRs,
It's for all three.
all three?
So the RFQ went out for an architectural design.
Okay,
It wasn't an RFQ, actually, it was a reuse, prototype reuse.
all right.
So the architects that were involved in the original prototypes are engaged on that. We're negotiating, and the CMARs was an RFQ, and the building officials were an RFQ.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Thank you. So do we have any public comments?
Oh, I also want to
Somebody
say,
from the public?
thank you for coming to the board,
You're welcome, it was
speaking
my
to
first
Sharon.
time, so
Thank you, did a great job.
thank you. Any public comment? I noticed there's somebody from the public today.
I brought a guest with me, so just to kind of shadow on the solar conversation. We've done some business in the past before, just want to have another opinion on board in case there was a better way to do things.
So today, the idea was bring to a meeting one more time the discussion regarding the solar panels and alternative energy for the schools. I think we already have two presentations, and I think we talk in depth that we received the presentation, the PowerPoint, and another report. I hope everybody had the chance to look at it. I think it's worth it to discuss it one more time and close it today, so we can make a recommendation and move with the rest of the agenda for the rest of the year. So, I'll wait for comments, guys. I know that Mr. Tobler had a lot of stuff to say last time regarding parking lots and ideas for solar power. And
Do you have any comments from your guest on that there?
The first question would be, is the delta between roof mounted versus carport mounted worth the 105% markup? If we're gonna spend that kind of money on each school, would it not be better served going some other direction, be that its own power generation source that's aided by solar as opposed to just solar?
You want me to comment on that?
If you want to, just go out a little bit of
I'm-
information.
I've been in solar for 12 years, and I actually helped write the curriculum for the Florida Department of Education for solar installation 5 years ago. And when I saw this, I'm very familiar with TerraSmart and RBI Solar. RBI Solar is manufacturer, and they do all the Lowe's greenhouses and things. They've been around a very long time. They've done even the Cincinnati Zoo carports. If you go up to the Cincinnati Zoo, the entire zoo is powered by their carports. It's a very expensive way to do solar though. When you do structures like carports like that, you're talking about steel, the engineering, the ground, all of the footers and everything. So you're getting away from the actual return on investment of what solar is meant to be, because you're getting into the actual architecture, engineer, wind lift of the actual structure. You're getting away from the actual return on investment of what the solar panels and the collectors can actually do in DC current fed back to the grid or stored energy. So, I understand that there's probably concerns about, putting penetrations or anything up on top of a roof because of the obvious reasons for that. However, I did a full removal on Orion's Pembroke Pines Mall in Miami is powered by, not completely by solar, but the most of that mall is covered in solar. It's an older system, and they built one of those rock climbing walls, and we had to tear off that solar and put it back on after they added a second story for the rock climbing wall in Pembroke Pines Mall. The difference there is at 195 mile an hour wind lift in Miami, it's all done with concrete block ballast systems. That makes it very easy for removal and reinstall without any penetrations to that deck mount or anything. So, it has a better return on investment because you're talking about a ballast cinder block system that holds the weight, and the panels can be put at a 7-degree angle, just as like they are recommended, compared to the steel and everything that goes into the concrete and the footers of a carport. I understand the structure's nice, that you have shaded parking, or a parent pickup is out of the rain, or whatever it is. And those systems can be done now, in some areas, and maybe it is nice looking and things, but I think the most important thing here is talking about the return on investment of these systems. And when we talk about canopy structures like this, you're getting away from investing into solar and the return on investment of the actual production against consumption of energy, and you're getting into building expensive structures. And so, for me, I think that's one thing that probably should be kept in mind here, because there are very smart ways to install solar up on the top of those roofs without penetrating. It's very easy to remove and reinstall those systems around any type of roof leaks that you might have that's not caused by the solar system. Or if you have to, hot mop or reseal any of that roof, it can be moved over and stacked up and moved right back. Because most of those are done in strings and plugged into different inverters. And so you can shut down part of the system while that part of the roof gets done without shutting down the whole system. So I just think it's something that should probably be considered or thought about compared to something that's extremely expensive.
When we had the presentation last week and both presented the numbers and the savings, it was, I didn't agree with the data that they were showing because it was not showing any of the expenses, like what happened when you have to remove the panels to re-roof the school, or what's the cost of the labor, and what happened with the 30 years warranty of the roof that the school district wants to have in all of the roofs. So there was a lot of data that was not showing, and they were talking basically that you start saving at year 15 or 16. But then when you add all of those variables, you might have another 10 years of expenses. So how much you save? 5 years? So, but, I don't think we've had enough information.
If I may add to her conversation is, the number came in without any structural analysis for the existing build. So that number was not part of the overall budget of the, return on investment. So like she said, what Clarissa said, that 10, 15 years return, it means that 15, 20. By then, the roof has to be replaced. So that's another cost that need to be added, factored in your equation.
Well, the other factor too is that Island Coast High School is a shelter building. So right now, that building has to maintain ICC 500 standards for missile impact and wind uplift. So none of the components in the dollar values to accommodate 200 mile per hour wind gusts. I believe, Ryan, that's what ICC 500 is, 200 mile per hour winds for 3-second bursts.
And now we have to gauge the panels.
I believe Island Coast was pre-ICC 500.
It was, but obviously if we're doing any upgrades up there, none of that structure is designed to accommodate.
Now everything that goes on the roof needs to be secure and caged, and so there's a lot of add-ons that we didn't discuss on this presentation. So is it worth it really, the
Well, I
investment?
can tell you, the construction department, obviously you're the CAC committee, you bring recommendations to the board. The construction department and maintenance department is against anything going up on our roof.
Oh, yeah.
We're a subtropical area, we have hurricanes, we experience severe damage to many of our school roofing systems. And our roofs typically down here, because of the heat, you've got a 15-year life if you're lucky, top end.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
And
lucky if you get 15 years.
So, we're not against solar, but we're against putting penetrations in a roof.
Yeah.
Now, the other issue I heard of concrete blocks, great concept, kind of like Jersey barriers holding down the system. But you still, and that's in lieu of structural steel, getting back into the structure of the building, but you still have to have heavier structural members, columns, beam posts, and foundations to support that concrete weight load of ballast block. So you're paying one way or the other, so.
Can I add with one more? It's FPL does have some kind of program that will pay for some of the covered parking, as long as you put, because you're enhancing their grid system. That will happen. I mean, that's one example is really to get after FPL to see if we can provide those structures for us.
I don't think it's something out there.
It's a great idea, but I can't tell you how many street posts we replace on a yearly basis, whether it be from buses, students, people, construction workers, We have our canopies, or student drop-offs, those are the aluminum canopies you see. Constantly replacing them every year, whether it's a UPS driver, a FedEx driver, a school bus coming for an after program, somebody just losing control of their car. Anything you put in a parking lot is subject to damage. So, and remember, the other factor is now you're getting into the steel structure that they mentioned, because again, we're not allowed to have missiles on a school site. So the foundations and the structure to support the carrying of these systems has to be such that it can take those wind loads. And typically, most of our schools, I believe, right now are 150 mile per hour. And the wind zones, even the older schools that were loaded, was 120 plus an importance factor of 1.5, which brings you to like 149.5 miles per hour.
So a bit more than that, they're usually
About
160, 180.
But
Different calculation methods with the newer codes.
correct. So the steel that would be required to support anything even in the parking areas. We just did a design on Franklin Parks. We made a commitment, we were gonna use some solar just to show that we wanted to see how it works. So there's a whole structure that the architect has designed around the front radius of that school, steel structure, which comes at a cost in the GMP, to support these panels, and the panels will run the parking lot lights in the front. And it comes at an exorbitant cost. But, you know, we wanna go solar, so we're gonna see what we can gain there, and if there's a benefit with lighting the front of the school with free energy. Now, that's our first shot out of the barrel on that, but again, it comes at a substantial
Well,
cost.
in that case, you had a little bit of offset, because you didn't build the canopy anyway.
Correct.
This canopy is more expensive, so you're looking at the delta, not a whole thing from nowhere.
Correct.
One
So
thing.
we're not experiencing the return on the investment that if we had not had to go to that structural requirement.
One thing that I would say to this as well, because I'm looking at very large solar systems here. So, you know, and I understand the proposal here, because I see the electrical bills that are going into this. But, you know, one way to think about a better return on investment, maybe a smarter way into utilizing solar for the right purposes, would be to think about the stored energy and the importance of the critical loads that you need to bear in a state of emergency, or when grid goes down, or for stored energy purposes. So it might not always be about your total consumption offset. It might be actually a plan for making sure you have security, making sure that you have the right communication system set up, making sure all of that, your computer systems and all the hard drives and everything don't crash when power goes out. And taking it from a stance of what's important in critical loads during state of emergency or during power outages in the area, and making that your offset of actual expenses, because it's very hard to offset some of these electrical bills. And I understand, you know, the weight load that would go into that much concrete up on top of a roof. However, if you're doing it, instead of making it all about the return on investment on a full offset of electrical consumption, of a portion of it based on critical loads for state of emergency, you'd cut this solar system probably in half. You'd see a better return on investment. The roof probably could handle that weight load a lot differently. It wouldn't be taking up this much space. You'd have enough stored energy that your return on investment would be actually calculated into the energy that you're storing and utilizing yourself, because it can all be scheduled and programmed just like your sprinkler systems. And you would have a better sense of what solar actually does, because now it goes from feeding the grid, storing your own, using your own power, and needing less from the actual power company. So those numbers don't come in these calculations, because none of this actually is talking about your use of your own stored energy and becoming your own power company. It's becoming dollar for dollar offset against consumption against production. Using it a little smarter in critical loads for what is important to the school, and then selling it back once the batteries are used, stored, and not in use, now your return on investment shifts completely.
But you're still talking about the installation on the roof, right?
I would be putting it up on the roof.
Okay,
These
so-
canopy structures are expensive. I mean, if you go with that, it does, it changes your return on investment. I don't have any problem against these, we install these as well,
Okay,
but it just changes your return on investment.
okay, so when the customer says, I don't want that on my roof, it's gotta be a paradigm shift if you're gonna do business with the district. And, if you're able to pull this off and do business with the district, it's huge. One thing that I'm hearing loud and clear, I mean, a horn blowing is, it won't be on the roof. So,
Due to penetration, correct?
absolutely.
Well,
not only that.
one is
Missiles that are on top of the roof, so.
penetrations and missiles.
Yes, so what happens is if this program is gonna move forward, you gotta find a way to do it without putting it on the roof. And that's the deal breaker. Am I correct?
Correct, I mean, what would be apropos, but it would take a lot of working with South Florida Water Management. We have dry detention storage areas. So similar to what you see, some of the cell towers will go in a corner of an area and create a pedestal system. I mean, that's unused area, it's area that's never gonna be used, but you've gotta get the permission of the water management because you're now somewhat restricting the maintenance of those areas. So they could be up on piers, you could put solar fields out there. But Tom, you were with FGCU, they did a solar program out there. Is that still functioning?
It is, yeah. It was greatly, the funding for that was greatly offset by federal funds.
Okay,
So we
so
were able to do it.
if you didn't have the federal funds, would it be self-sustaining? I'd
The
heard
payback
that,
was on
I'm
like-
just,
The payback was on like 20 years, and this is like 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, those panels were hundred and
Yeah,
eighty-five
it
watts
was a long
each.
time ago, but the payback was like 20 years, I think, and that was with probably half the cost being subsidized.
and I think at that time, the panels and longevity expectancy was only 10 to 12 years, was it not?
Yeah, yeah,
So-
and that system has a tracking system too, so it's a lot more expensive than.
Plus the person to weed whack around, I heard all about that.
Yeah.
So
The tracking system
that's-
broke, they didn't replace it,
they
just.
didn't have the maintenance dollars to do it, so,
That's the biggest problem I have with the technology right now. I think it's fantastic, but we are not there yet. It's still the maintenance, who pays for the removal of the panels on reinstalling when you have to maintain the roof or replace the roof? Who pays for the moving around if you have it in canopies? Who pays for missile impact if there's a hurricane? So I don't think with the return is good enough at this point to recommend go with alternative technologies. And on top of that, there are other programs that have been cut because there's no budget, and this is a gigantic investment. And does it make sense to make this investment when we should be investing probably in how the spaces that the kids are occupying should be the important part? I don't think the technology is there yet, or at least the presentation that we have doesn't show that the technology is there yet.
Well, the idea, I think, overwhelmingly is to find a way to save money. FPL is already advertised, they're gonna raise our rate 30% over the next 3 years. Any of you who pay bills already know they've already jacked it up a lot in the last month. We spent 13.8 million last year in electrical bills, 30% of that's 3.9, if my math is correct. Million, so we're gonna spend money every year, just for whatever reason. So the idea we could maybe even save some of that cost and then reinvest it, like you said, back into the schools somehow. What can we do to kind of, capture some of that savings ourselves?
Again, I think solar is an awesome idea.
we've got a combination, Alan
and
Coast
it
is
would-
CEC.
Probably save money, however, the fork in the road, or the roadblock is, this district does not want it on the roofs. So, again, I say, it probably needs to be a paradigm shift to figure out another way to get it installed, and it not be on the roof. I think if it wasn't on the roof, we'll be having a different conversation right now.
But the other thing, even if you, let's say you cost the same money, install it on the canopy, you still get the savings, you're not gonna see them for 20 years. And in 20 years, you don't even know if you don't even know what other expenses the panels will generate. I saw in one of the schools, there was some federal grant that paid for panels. And they have a beautiful area with solar panels that don't work. and they cannot even take them out because they were paid by a grant. So we're stuck with a nice panel farm that nobody maintains, they don't work, they don't produce any energy. What's the point?
Well, I think the presenter came to you, and what he said is they would pay for the cost of the install, but every year they would take 20% of the energy savings back. And based on a normal install, that's not additional steel for uplift, for hurricanes, it was a 20 to 25-year payoff. And if you had to replace your roof at year 15, you had to pay for those panels to be removed, so the roof that was put on that was another expense. No one's mentioned the UPS system. Now, they said they maintain it. You know, if you're looking at producing a lot of savings and selling energy back to the grid, you're talking about a UPS battery system, similar to what our CEP buildings are for our central energy plants, for our chillers, to hold these. Those batteries need to be maintained, they need to be, and so now we're paying for that service through the solar people. I don't know that, and let's be honest here, caulking, you all go to Home Depot. Caulking's supposed to last 20 years, says right on the tube. Anybody have any caulk that ever lasted anywhere on their home for 20 years? LED lights. Yeah, you got your security lights at home. I've replaced 3 of them now in the past 2.5 years twice. They're supposed to last 15 years lifetime. It just doesn't survive the length of time we need to maintain our buildings properly. And I think by the time it even reaches the payoff point, they're gonna be obsolete panels and you don't wanna use them anymore. So you never even get to that 30-year point where maybe it's cash money coming in your pocket and you own the system.
I think it's, the district needs to really start looking to the future, not just today. I support your effort on as far as the roof. I work for Collie County. I refuse to let my architect put anything on the roof. Not solar, no, not even HVAC, and Ryan knows that very well. I mean, I refuse to put anything on the roof. One is staff has to maintain it. 90-degree outside, I mean, it's hell. And any penetration for the roof. But I still think for new upcoming school that we need to start looking into investing in, something on the parking lot and in the grass area, retention area. I mean, some kind of system that actually give you some money back. I mean, like he said, I mean, there's a lot of money spent on FPL, it's not even cheaper.
I wouldn't be opposed to parking lots. It's just, you've heard from all of the designers that are part of your committee, the cost to provide the structural strength and the dunnage to support those for uplift in a storm event is astronomical and outweighs the cost of the savings you would get. That's the rub. I mean, I can have somebody hit a pole from time to time and you go out and you fix it as need be. But if the cost of the structure outweighs the savings, that money that would have been put out at the forefront can be better repurposed on the school seats that we need, that we're 4 years behind on our school seat program. That's just a fact. So those are dollars that would come out of our capital plan and shift towards an assumed energy savings.
If you look at the Babcock model, they set aside a zillion acres for a solar farm. And they have them all on pedestals and nice little rows and makes really cool marketing pictures and all that. I don't know, maybe there is an opportunity there, and I don't know enough about how you can sell the power back to the grid and make money on it, but is there an opportunity that the district might have a piece of property somewhere that in their inventory that's not really suited for schools, and maybe they could partner up with somebody, FPL or whoever, and build a little solar farm and sell them power back to the grid like Babcock is doing?
Yes, that is definitely a possibility, but the problem is large parcels of land are so scarce right now. The 2 RFQs that I just spoke of, those properties have no sewer, water, or power. It's gonna cost me millions to bring those utilities to those, but those were the largest parcels that we were able to purchase at the time that would hold school sites or multiple schools on one site. So land just isn't there anymore. So, I mean, I think your idea is great. And if the school board were to direct taking one of our parcels and create a solar field, I'm behind it 100%. But I think in the long term, those parcels were bought for school buildings to support the capacity need. And if we're putting solar panels on that, we're losing the parcel that we own to provide buildings.
I think what Bob was referring to is, I mean, from presentations a few years back, we were under the impression there was inventory that was too small for school sites, that may have been left to the district, that wasn't really that useful. And if you can't do anything with it, why not take a shot? It doesn't have to be an enormous parcel for, you know, a little bit of feedback.
Well, they're looking at that now, Ryan. They're actually looking to sell those parcels that aren't big enough to help support the purchase of parcels large enough and in the areas where they have the growth to meet that capacity.
I think working with your design team, innovative design can be presented and incorporates solar system into future, you know, parcel like what Bob's indicating. I think it's time to move in that direction, especially for new school. Existing school, I don't buy it. I mean, it's existing structure, existing roof is not gonna support it. You don't have enough site, but a future school, when we purchase all those land for future school, maybe we dedicate acreage for solar.
You bring a good point up. Collier County Schools just built a $200 million high school, GGG. Do they have
I don't
solar?
work for college school, I work for the government.
Okay. Well, I don't think any of our neighboring school systems are doing that. To the best of my knowledge, Lee County isn't putting solar systems on any of their new buildings, their fire stations, their libraries.
Yeah.
So we don't, my personal opinion is we haven't seen the payback. It's a great idea. Maybe someday we'll come up with roof systems. Maybe we change our design on our roofs to where we use Elon Musk's energy storing cells, and the walls inside the upper floors of the building become battery packs, just like they have for homes now. I don't know if you've seen that, but the shingle roofing system. Maybe that's something where we get away from flat roofs and now we go with, you know, hipped and ridged roofs, and we use a solar collecting roofing system.
There you go.
But I don't see any of our other partners.
$1 million.
The thing I don't see is I don't see the largest employer, which is Lee Health and Lee County Schools, Lee County, our other neighboring Collier County, Charlotte. None of the neighboring areas have this. The only place that has this right now was from a science program at FGCU, which obviously it doesn't sustain itself. It's more of an educational tool, I would think. And Babcock Ranch, the marketing feature. You know,
We did put, solar on the new water school they just opened, filled up the roof completely, and we did start off looking at a ballasted system, but this was, you know, 3 years ago when it went to bid, and at that time, none of the ballasted systems had their Florida product approvals. They were in testing, they were just not ready for rollout, as I understood it. We did, you know, kind of a steel frame system and put it up on the roof there, and I believe the offset to the building energy was close to 20%. And it's a high-end science lab too, it's an energy hog type of building. So, I mean, it did take a good chunk off of it and cost, what, like $1.1 million or
Yeah,
something like that?
it was a combination hybrid of ballasted and mechanically fastened. So there are penetrations in the roof on that building for the system.
and at what point in time are they gonna be able to do maintenance to replace that roof? Who pays that burden?
And not only that, you said that offset 20%, so, but in how much you have to invest to put the system in? So when you say 1 point something million,
I think it was a 15-year payback. If you look at-
15 years
if you look at
payback, in
just
15 years, you have to replace that roof. So it's,
But it's
I
on,
think
it's
it's
on structural
excellent,
steel
I
frame,
don't
it's
think
just
we're
like,
not there yet.
it's a pitch pocket, put the glue
Yeah.
around it.
We did this, my previous, before coming with the district, I did all Bristol Myers Squibb high-end laboratories in New Jersey. All of the science laboratories, pharmaceutical, have pitch pockets, post and beams for all of their mechanical equipment in every lab. And over the course of time, those buildings would leak, especially since they have snow up there. And it was constant roof maintenance, pitch pockets failing. Word of thumb, we're down here, we get a lot more rain down here. You don't put a hole in a roof in Florida. It's not wise.
Is there a lot of people, who in here has any, or in here is that LEED certified? Anybody in here?
What's your question?
LEED certified?
Yeah.
I was just kind of curious, I mean, I am too, but obviously it was like 15, 20 years ago, I mean, LEED was pretty big, right, on campuses? And you see, it obviously didn't work over time, it was super expensive, but you saw this trend of, at the beginning, they were thinking about, there were, a lot of solar equipment, things like that. It seems like the trend now or the past is just energy reduction, not necessarily, trying to pay for energy, but try to reduce energy, just, orientation or a lot of architectural stuff. And so, it seems like these days, I think people are getting the biggest bang for their buck for trying to reduce energy than trying to like store it and trying to capture it and things like that. I don't know.
And that's exactly what we do.
Yeah.
We design to lead, all of our architects that are involved, we design to lead. We're not gonna go to get the plaque, we're not gonna spend 3% of the GMP to get the little 8.5 by 11 oak plaque saying you're platinum. But all of our new projects are LEED designed for energy saving, in conjunction with Florida Building Code that mandated that in 2019. So we believe in that. When we do renovations to schools, we have to meet current code. We try to bring up our insulation, or change our windows out. We're always looking, we go with mag bearing chillers. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. Those are basically floating bearings in a magnetic field for less friction and so forth, for energy savings, loss of heat. That's our chiller types that we put in all of our buildings. You know, at some point in time, but I don't think you'll get with it, from energy savings digging in deep wells. I did it 20 years ago, where we actually bring the cold water at, 58 degrees from 200 feet down, bring it up, but I think we have such water problems with our aquifers now that South Florida Water Management probably wouldn't allow us to do that.
I agree with you to say something. I think the investment is better if you can invest in designing a school suit to a site instead of repeat a prototype or per building just because the design is already done.
Right.
I think the investment is better if you design a building for a particular site, for a particular orientation, et cetera, than pay for the technology and plaster solar panels everywhere when the technology is not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, you
I
have.
think there's a way to design a building to savings.
And I know the school district and everybody does, designs, uses those practices here all the time. It just seems like maybe the focus should be more, trying to enhance those energy savings right now. Because eventually solar may be doable someday, but to me, it's got a long way to go based on conversations, and yeah, it's great, it works. But, I think we've got a little ways to go, and investing in energy reduction is probably the best. Like we're doing right now, just continue doing that.
Are there any locations that have, large standing seam roofs? Metal standing seam roofs?
There's some.
Like for
Yeah,
the
we got a few schools.
gymnasium?
We got a few schools.
Yeah, like
Those, I mean, there you have,
middle schools and things like that.
on those, they have standing seam clamps with zero penetration. And it bites onto the standing seam, no penetration, and then you mount the rail right to it. That is actually the cheapest way to actually install solar. It would change the cost of everything. You wouldn't need concrete ballast, you wouldn't need anything. You need the metal standing seam clamp and the rail. It's all standard at 195 mile-an-hour wind lift, and rails and clamps are cheap. And then you put the panel right onto it. It changes the cost of everything. Now, like I said, solar might not be good for every location, but I'm hearing the objections here and trying to come up with solutions. To me, that's the most cost-effective solution that gets you into the solar game. You can monitor the return on investment based off of 1 or 2 locations on what you could fit on standing seam roofs. And then if you wanna add batteries, or if that's a nightmare or not, but it gets you your foot into understanding what the capacity of it is, what the return on investment is, and it's a lot more affordable than canopies, ballast, roof penetrations, or anything like that. To me, that's the simplest solution.
That's an existing school.
Yeah, these are existing schools, and what he's saying makes sense. You could put it on the metal without penetrating and using a clamping system. So there are some schools that have that. Again, your discussion here is about energy and savings, so you certainly would get that in that component. The problem is the beauty of it. I think the architects that are part here know, if you ever go down Martin Luther King, and you go to the flea market. And, they're powering that flea market. They don't care what it looks like. They don't wanna pay the energy bill for the people down below. It takes the aesthetic appearance of your building. Now, I'm not an architect, if it was up to me, everything would be a Butler building with one roll-up door and a jelly jar light fixture and floor drain. I think on some of the schools that have those architectural standing seam roofs, you probably get a lot of pushback from the visual.
And none of the new schools have slope roofs.
Correct.
All of the
That's
new
the
schools
thing.
have roofs.
We went after, an award for our building, correct? We need the building to function properly first,
No, I agree.
before, and I mean, I personally don't have issue with the architect didn't get an award for their design.
You'd be surprised.
I'm not
To be
surprised.
honest with you,
I mean,
I'm
I-
okay with that, I sleep at night very well.
There's a lot of panels, they don't have to be the metallic purple either, it looks like just flat black.
Yeah,
That's a little less,
yeah,
um,
they make black, now panels, again, going back to the FGCU system, because I've been out there and I helped a lot of, even the teachers and things, when they brought the Tesla Powerwall in, I was one of the guys that came in and wheeled that red Tesla Powerwall into that classroom. But the difference with those panels are 185 watts. And they had a tracking system on them that broke years ago. And that's 15-year-old system, and I'm very familiar with even the guy that installed it and designed that system. But we're talking about solar panels now, they're 550 watts.
But see, what you
Right.
just say is, it's interesting. You say 15 years ago, think about it, it had a 20 years return, but 15 years later it's obsolete.
But however,
So
when those
you pay for a
panels,
system that
Right.
is obsolete before it pays off.
Well,
And
then,
that's the
somebody,
problem
Yeah,
that I
well,
have with
the
it.
ROI has gotta be less than 10 years then, or it makes sense.
See,
Well,
but
who's-
like the
who's-
proposal that we have, it takes about 20 years.
Yeah, they-
to pay.
well, that's
Yeah,
a wrong, that's
yeah.
not, that's all based on canopies and concrete
No,
structures.
no, the one that we had was on the roof.
And who's-
Original.
who on the roofs who's cleaning them? Just like any other piece of glass, they've gotta be cleaned, probably every year at a minimum.
The rain.
Yeah, the rain ain't, you look at your car windows, you know that pine pollen don't come off just by rain.
There's some farms in Walker that put them on that to go out there with water trucks every couple months and drive down the roads and wash them.
Okay, so there's another, who's doing that?
That's too low,
Who's doing
that's
that?
because they're low to the ground. Yeah, well, most of the time up on roofs, you probably only need to clean them every 5 to 6 years.
You gotta look at some of our coping metal parapets. I mean,
They're pretty dirty.
we get a lot down here, especially with wind and everything. I'm just saying, you gotta look at the maintenance perspective. We already shop out a lot of our maintenance, even though we have 155 people, there's just so much maintenance on 88 buildings, we can't do it all. So at some point in time, nobody, even the guy presenting the 20% payback, ever said anything about the cleaning of the panels. And in order to gain the maximum benefit from the solar, they've got to be cleaned.
I like this idea, as a matter of fact, I'm doing a project in Collier County right now, metal, panel, I'm gonna introduce that. I didn't know there was type of panel that will be left without it.
It's very cost
You know,
effective.
it sounds like almost like a unistrut system with a beam
Yeah.
clamping.
It's a clamp, and it has, 2 bolts in it, when you put your impact driver onto it, it bites into the metal. But it doesn't penetrate.
On the standing seam, which
On
is
the
a crimp on a standing seam.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they just did that on a house down the street from me.
What
They
about
put a
the
brand
warranty,
new
the
metal
warranty,
roof
would
on
that
it, and
affect
here
the
came
roof?
the solar pool heaters.
Would that affect your warranty for the roof?
No,
If
it's
you have anything on it?
No, it does not.
Because most likely it's, you got what, 20 years on the, metal roof?
Yeah, it doesn't affect the warranty.
Metal roof's about 20 before you've got to coat them with something.
Yeah. Okay.
So now at 20 years, you're gonna pull the system off just so you can maintain and provide a new coating. I mean, metal roof should last 30, 40 years if you maintain it.
If you were doing solar right, and your return on investment should be around 8 years. I mean,
If
if
you do it right.
yeah, that's without all this concrete and steel beams and all these things. If you were doing solar right, and you had the right offset investment into it, and you did take advantage of maybe whatever federal grant you could get, or whatever that might be, that's all on the side as well. If you're doing cost savings against the increasing cost of power right now, you're not trying to offset crazy $600,000 a year cost into figuring out how much concrete you need to hold it all down. If you were to do it just on rail mount systems, what you would produce against what you would actually get back should be around 7 to 8 year return on investment.
Now, we were discussing in the committee is basically the proposal that this company brought to the committee, and the proposal they brought here, it was a 15 to 20 years return. So it was not 8 years. So, but in the ideal world, probably what you say is true, but the proposal that we have is completely different. So I think that we need to wrap the discussion, and the point is what we're gonna propose to the board, because we have to base in the presentation that we had, and the presentation that we had was not an 8 years payoff, was almost 20, and then ongoing maintenance cost, and there were a lot of costs that we discussed here in the committee that were not shown on that presentation, like what happened when you replace a roof, or what happened, how you clean the panels, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think we need to make a decision, an emotion to
Do we
talk to
have,
the board.
do we have to make a recommendation?
But I think that after 2 presentations and a whole discussion, at least we should
Well,
say
let's-
what we think.
So we discussed the subject, do we have to make a recommendation to the board?
I
Has the
don't
board
think so.
asked
No.
for it?
You don't have to make a
We don't need
recommendation
to make a recommendation.
if you choose not to.
We can, unless, if there's a motion.
If you
make a
choose to, then yes, it
recommendation,
would be a
we'll do it.
recommendation to the board, because you're talking about a design shift in expenditure, potential expenditure of capital.
So we could say, so we could recommend, we recommend it this way, or we could say we don't recommend it, or we could say nothing.
Exactly.
Right. You
Correct.
would only make a recommendation if you want me to take something back to the board to share.
What if we're able to table this discussion, start an exploratory committee to get more and more detail based on what the objections are from the board and from the school, and see if we can find something else we can recommend that's even better.
I think
Well,
the
there's, just so
idea
you know,
we
there's
have-
no objections, just for the record, there's no objections from the
No, but-
board on this. From the school's
necessarily
maintenance and
like that.
construction, the objection is we will not put anything on our school roofs. Now, they brought up a point of a standing seam metal roof. Has merit to it. It might be something in the long term to look at.
Yeah.
But I don't know that you're at a point now where you could show data where if you did a study school with the amount of area, what the cost would be and what the payback would be on that. So I think the presentation you all got previously, it's your vote, not mine, is more or less submarine. However, you brought up another potential of something for another time.
Thank you so much. And I'm suggesting that we, first of all, have like a beta site or somewhere where we can test some of these technologies and see how it fits with us. Not the whole, gamut of solar panels and so on and so forth, until we see the suitability of some of these technologies to our buildings. So in other words, what I'm suggesting is we need more time to understand what is being offered and how it would fit us. So study would be, in my opinion, would be suggested more understanding our buildings and our need to minimize the consumption of power and our need to add alternative energy in it. So that's,
I guess my question to you is, do you want to make a motion, or you're suggesting?
I'd like to make a motion to have a study, to evaluate, our needs for alternative energy. Is it needed? Is it gonna serve us? Is it gonna fit our buildings? What would? And, and then we can vote if we understand it really, someone that has that background, that would do that study.
So,
Before the motion, can I say something? Before you make a motion, if it's okay?
Yeah.
Well, we have to have a second first on the motion.
yeah, we don't have a second yet, so.
Did you make a motion, or you were just saying you may want to make a motion?
I want to make it.
So, he's
Try to
making a
do
motion.
That's what happened last time.
This is where it got off the
I
tracks too
know.
last time.
We can comment on it too, so.
Yeah, we'll comment after somebody second the motion.
What is the motion?
The motion,
Propose a study
basically, yeah.
Okay.
to evaluate our needs and what technologies will fit our buildings. A proper consultant agency or a consultant that can do that study. What,
We have a budget to do that?
I mean, that's what we're suggesting. It will cost money, but it won't cost as much as, building a whole system or even, having any failures.
So how this would play out is that he's making the motion.
So
If he
can I
gets
have a
us-
second so we can keep discussing it, or this is gonna be just a conversation?
And what'll happen is if you do decide to do it as a recommendation, then that recommendation would be brought to the board to do the study. It
Well,
would have to be put in the yearly
if it's
budget to be
approved.
funded, and then they'd have to do an RFQ to find a vendor that could perform that study function.
So if you're gonna do a study, it should be done by the vendor, is it?
Let's have a second. Yeah.
So can I have a second? Is anybody gonna second the motion?
I don't see anybody.
Second to close debate.
So you're gonna second the motion?
I'll second it, let's vote.
Okay, so we have a second, so I'm gonna add something though. Honestly, I think that, we can propose to the board to, investigate a little bit, further in this technology, but we are not a committee that investigates solar, that's supposed to study solar.
Yeah, it's
We
kind of like
just-
our, it's like our mission.
It's not our duty. We, received a presentation from a solar company that gave us great ideas on how we can implement it, alternative technologies, but it's not our duty as a committee to keep investigating solar. So that's my 2 cents, because the motion was second, so now we need to discuss it.
John had a point too.
Okay, so I'm thinking I'm hungry too, and I'm trying to say this fast.
We have 8 minutes, guys.
Okay, so in terms of the motion, I'm thinking more of doing nothing. Giving, because I see there's a lot of people interested, giving them an opportunity to figure out other ways to make this happen, without us having to put a motion together or sending anything over to the district, so that it'll be kind of, nothing attached. Bring something beautiful, and if it shines, it will light up.
Well, we have a motion on the table right now.
That was my discussion.
Now we'll have a
With
second on
respect
that.
to.
No, I have 2 discussion things. Number 1 is, are we even the right committee to do that? Which I'm like, and if a company is interested to do solar with the district, what is the right committee for them to solicit? Just saying.
Well, wasn't this committee founded to kind of help find savings in construction and how to advise them?
Right, and it could, but like right now, we're not even like the right ones to
Of
do
course,
that,
but,
right?
we found an idea here, let's maybe explore that.
Right.
They haven't brought any costs for the new schools in for us to look at.
And then in regards to potential cost savings, like the comment about the canopies for, do you say Franklin Park's doing them for the lighting? Like, wouldn't that be something that somebody's internally gonna monitor to see what the delta is over time? Because then if it does actually work, then you go, okay, next school we do that.
You could look at that school against a previous prototype school to see if there is any energy savings in regards to parking lot lights being on or
Right.
powered by the solar. I mean, over time, that's gonna
Right,
take a
because
couple
then
of
again,
years.
it's like, then you say like, yeah, that worked, or no, that didn't, but that already is a thing that you're doing.
For now, I haven't
Right.
hit the red pen on that job yet, but
Okay.
you never know.
All right.
Any other comments?
I think you just need to continue the conversation, because it's not where we can't make a decision on
That's right.
everything today. It's gonna
I
happen.
agree, but we have motion on the
Maybe we
table.
talk 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I think,
Let's go.
I
So
think
if anybody, if
I
nobody
think you
else
need to
has.
finish the motion with this
That's what
gentleman.
she's trying to do.
No, it's done, yes, and so if there are no more discussions, we need to
Vote.
vote. So, Julie, you wanna read the motion again, or you want me to?
My motion to have a study done to explore alternative energies and what technologies will benefit the district's needs. And Steve Ward seconded.
So, you in favor? Opposed? Sorry,
Do we have an official count of how many people opposed the vote?
1 in favor, the rest opposed.
So we had 1 in favor, and then you had the rest of the
The rest
committee
of the
was
committee
opposed.
opposed, am I right? Mhm.
I would like to make a motion to continue this conversation next month.
Second.
I have a
Who
question.
second?
And
Double second.
if that
So
makes-
are we changing our, okay, anybody discussion regarding the motion that was just made by?
I mean, let me clarify, add more to that motion. If we can have, look into the metal roof system and see if we can get some actual data from your, that company, then we have something to discuss next month.
Well, you need to talk to your board chair, because I believe you already have an itinerary for all for each of your meetings
Yes.
throughout the end of
Yeah.
the year.
Well,
So it's
Maybe-
really up to the
Just
board
say
chair and the
consult,
board, whether you wanna talk about this again.
Yeah,
Motion
We don't need a
second.
motion for that.
Mr. Tobler, so let's discuss it. We have an agenda for the rest of the year. Of course, if the committee vote to bring this item back for discussion, will be part of next agenda with the other stuff that we already have. So it's up to you guys.
And who voted, are you motion for the
To
continued
prolong the
discussion?
discussion to next meeting, and Mr. Tobler second.
Okay.
So I already gave my 2 cents on the discussion.
What
So
is next
anybody
month's
else?
agenda as of right now?
Roof protocol for the district, that's what I think Art had requested for the month of May. He recalls that, but I remember seeing that in the minutes, that was voted on for May.
What was it again?
Roofing protocol for the district?
Yeah,
Okay, who's giving that presentation?
Art was talking about it.
So you're bringing a
Do
presentation?
you know you're bringing?
Well, thank you, Art.
Art?
Do it now.
TBD.
He brought it.
Okay.
So,
I'll-
and not only
I'll
that,
go
we have a whole agenda, we also have other schools that are gonna present, like, when we have Riverdale, we have an agenda, we have planning that we also come here, so we don't have too many meetings now.
Hey,
So if you wanna bring this subject back, it has to be voted by the committee, but we also have an agenda that would be nice if we follow, because we all agree on.
Since I was doing the presentation, do you need the whole hour, or do you want, you could, take half of it?
You tell me how long I have.
15 minutes.
4 minutes and a half.
4 minutes is fine, too. I can do that. No, probably about 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes.
So,
Has there been a vote yet?
No,
No.
it's not.
anybody
This
else,
is a
any more
conversation.
discussion?
Conceivably,
Can we
we're,
vote?
we're closer now than we were 2 years ago when the idea started. So it's been productive.
This
So
would be my
maybe-
recommendation as a liaison. You are the committee. You beat the solar thing into the ground a hard
Agreed.
time. You haven't really committed and done anything that's been a benefit to bring back to the board of the district. What I would suggest is, everybody seems to be on the same plane of not putting these on the roofs, correct? Okay. The cost of putting them in the parking lots with the structural steel is exorbitant. So it sounds like that's not a viable option at this moment in time either. We heard a conversation of possibly on standing seam ribs, solar panels might be a possibility on some schools where we have those roofing structures. So my suggestion for you guys would be, ask him to put together a school site, a possible savings, how many panels, what the potential energy use is, and he can issue that to you as a board. It doesn't mean you have to have a
We don't need to
presentation
have
and anything.
presentation.
You can all read up on it, you can look at the savings, and then when an opening
We're
comes
not a
in
solar
your work,
committee.
you can,
Here,
That was what my
Put
motion
together
was.
in a month,
I'll
anyway.
make, I'll make a suggestion. I think the school district wants to re-roof Calusa Elementary into a metal panel system. Why doesn't he work on that and come back and give us that? It's like.
there's no guarantee that that's gonna happen.
Yeah, that might not happen, but.
So my point being is, let him go ahead, we have some schools with the pitch roofs, standing seam, come up with your, just my recommendation, energy savings, what the potential could be, how many panels, what they forecast it might have. He can distribute that to all of you committee members to read, outside of this meeting. And then, when that's done and ready to go, then you squeeze him in a meeting maybe in September, October, after you've done over all the items that you've already put on your agenda and voted you want to have presented to you in the next 3 months.
I really don't want to bring the discussion to the committee again. We are already spending a lot of time in the solar discussion. We are not an energy committee. So,
Still.
yes, please.
Think of the future, think of the
Yeah,
future.
so the discussion is closed, guys. So everybody in favor to bring the discussion back to the committee?
Well, the discussion, not bring it to the committee, but also exactly what Scott mentioned, is to make sure, to get some data from the design team or
You
the
want to add that to your
company.
motion?
Well, I thought that's what my motion was,
You can't.
is to bring it back with some
Well,
data on the
continue the
metal.
conversation.
Do you agree to bring data to the committee?
Oh, absolutely. I just need to know where some of these locations are.
We love to have vendors give us data, but we don't want, we have to have an independent.
We can have a conversation.
Okay, so we're going to
Who's the
issues here.
parliamentarian?
The first one is, do we bring this subject back for discussion to the committee next meeting? I would like to call for a vote. Everybody in favor? And then we'll talk about your study. Anybody in favor? Opposed? Okay, so
So you
give
had
your
one-
hands up again, so Julie can do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 opposed.
So you had 2 in favor and 11 opposed.
11 opposed. So we're not bringing it next meeting. Now, are you, when you want to make a motion about the study, we'll do it. I'll make a motion that can you provide the study or information to the committee to review, now bring it to a meeting to review, and Julie can contact you, and she can distribute to the committee for
Depending,
us
yeah,
to
depending,
review.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you too much, but yeah, depending on the information, and maybe invited back,
Of course,
in a few months, when we have an opening in the agenda.
Happy to.
of course.
And I think we need to have an understanding of what maintenance,
I am making a
Yeah,
motion.
regular, required.
removal and
warranty
reinstall
type
costs,
basis.
everything.
Yeah.
Make a motion, please.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that, I'm sorry, the name of your company?
Berkshire Bay Contractors.
Berkshire Bay, is welcome to provide information to the committee on alternative mounting methods. We have beaten this one to death, and it's not going anywhere. But you're well aware of the limitations within the district for being here today. And if you'd like to present the committee some additional information, please, by all means, we'll provide a study school from the committee itself.
That's the motion?
Second,
Yeah, second. Call for the
any
vote.
discussion?
Yes, discussion.
Okay.
I do not recommend any vendors to give us a specific study, because with all due respect, that it's gonna be selling their system to us, like what happened before. It has to be an independent, like a third party that does. They can hire the third party, which is gonna be a plus for them. But a vendor with their stamp and seals, I do not recommend that.
Understand
Just so
your
you know,
concern?
I do consulting for 8 solar companies in the state of Florida, and I work for manufacturing and distribution. I'll get you as many quotes that match what I'm presenting to do.
Well, hold on, we are not asking for quotes, so I
No, we're
understand your
not cool, we're
concern.
not talking about study.
No
So,
problem.
Let's
Okay.
vote.
Let's close
Simplify your
discussion.
lives. Let this
Let's go
guy
for a
put
vote.
some information
Let's
together
vote.
and pass it to you. Once he passes it, if it looks like a juicy steak and we wanna talk about it, you can talk about it.
Yeah.
And
The
then
motion
if
is
it
on the
drives
table.
itself to the point where we wanna hire a consultant to do a study, independent and outside, that's a conversation after.
let's call for a vote.
Yes.
All in favor? Opposed? Okay. What was your vote? Okay. So we have one opposed, so we can take one against. Okay?
Motion adjourned.
Okay, so we have, for the good of the order, we have 30 seconds. So,
I just,
Yell, no.
30 seconds.
just hear me and then maybe you can say no. We have a issue with a lot of teachers that don't have homes or residences, or it's very expensive for them to stay in this area to service our, community. Is there a way, we have multiple projects now in Cape Coral, in Lehigh, to have units, something like studios or one room, one bathroom, or whatever, depending on the family size. Is there a way that, our district can help these teachers, maybe by finding, some way to help them either, get situated in units like that, build them, or find land that could be built for them?
There actually have been three previous boards ago, multiple presentations with a public-private partnership where our land would be used. They would come in and develop housing. The cost of such, they opened it up not only to school districts, but to like first responders, firemen, policemen, and so on and so forth. And 3 different times, entities came to the board bringing that PPP program. I forget the acronym, not the loan, but it was public-private partnership, I guess. And all three times it just could not come together and it died on the vine. So they have brought that to the board, several presentations over the years that I've been here, and it just never got any traction. But all the superintendents and the board members that were involved at that point were positive towards that, knowing there needed to be affordable housing for teachers. So maybe if you know people that maybe want to put together some kind of deal and talk to the board and the superintendent, it may be something they want to revisit again. But I know that they brought that concept 3 other times and it just never got traction and moved past that point.
What was the reason?
I don't recall. I mean, money is the root of all evil with everything. We didn't have enough money to keep up with our capacity needs, let alone send capital dollars over to become part and parcel of this. I can't say for certain.
I mean, if there is an intention, there will always be a way to do it, especially in our kind of market right
I've got two programs for you, we can talk about it afterwards, 2 programs that's going on now that could be a great help to you. They're doing it right now.
I think it's something that maybe we can discuss next time.
programs about
Housing.
I did want to point out that in the Florida Senate, the CCNA program is under attack again from the old home builders associations. Right now, they're only going after the public universities. We've been fighting it off yearly for quite some time, and it's just kind of like that next stepping stone. So if anyone knows anything, they're trying to terminate the CCNA arrangements for the state university system, and public schools will be next. So I think it's a good thing for all involved, but it's gonna be the Wild West if they open it up. So if you know anybody, make a phone call, send an email.
What does CCNA stand for?
It's the continuing services contracts. It's like just the legislative lingo for that. And, you know, we had it based at 4 million, and then you have to put it out for RFQ, we're just trying to get rid of it altogether.
Your qualification-based process for CMs, architects, and building inspectors would change, 100% differently. You get people from all over the place that are
Something that
qualified.
maybe we should bring back.
And then you gotta hire them, and then you're gonna say, well, why did I hire them? Well, they were allowed into the process unqualified.
They're cheaper.
Gotcha. We'll keep an eye on
Something
it.
that
Thank
we're
you.
probably gonna bring back here. Peter? Anything good of the order? Everybody there? Anybody else?
Nope.
Anything? Okay, I
Motion
have
to
a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
We already had a second.
All in favor?
Yep.
Anybody else?
Well, I'm gonna do what I did